Greetings from Las Vegas and welcome to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Thursday night. Glad to be representing EOG. The three letters stand for Eye on Gaming. EOG.com, a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. We have a special show for you tonight, as Marc Ratner is joining us on the phone line from his home here in Las Vegas. Marc is well known in the fighting sports, first as the former executive director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission and currently as the vice president of regulatory affairs for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Marc Ratner, good evening and welcome to the program.
Hi, John. I'm delighted to be with you, and I'm just happy to speak with you.
We're going to have a great time tonight because Marc is going to go through not only his career, but what he's seen here in Las Vegas. Graduated from Las Vegas High back in 1962. He then attended Nevada Southern, which later became UNLV. Graduated from the University of Nevada in Reno in 1966 with a degree in business management. Marc, go back to 1962. You're a senior in high school at Las Vegas High. What was the city like then?
Well, it was much smaller. I think in 62 there was Las Vegas High and Rancho High and Western was just opening, and Basic High and Gorman. I think that was all the schools that there were. So it was a small town, that's for sure.
And the casinos on the Strip. What was on the Strip in 1962? Well,
I can remember that the Stardust had just opened a couple years before that. And I also remember the El Rancho Hotel burning down in the 60s sometime. Mm-hmm. So, no, it was much smaller. And I can remember riding my bike up and down the Strip trying to get souvenirs. Dice they would give you in those days, and little presents. So, yeah, I have a lot of memories growing up here.
Were you ever much of a gambler, Marc? Did you ever get involved in gaming?
No.
No interest?
No. I would try to play with slots a little bit, but no, I never did.
Tell us then how you got hooked up with the Nevada Athletic Commission. You joined the commission in 1985. You were named chief inspector in 1987, quickly rose the ranks to executive director in 1992. How was it that you hooked up with the Nevada Athletic Commission?
Well, I was a lifelong official, high school, and started that in the late 60s. And I used to go to all the fights at the old Silver Slipper, and whenever I could, I would go to a fight. And I knew some of the boxing people. They knew me from UNLV, running the clock, and just being around sports. And in the early 80s, they asked me to if I wanted to become an inspector and work the back rooms for the Nevada Commission. And I think it was in 85. I became an inspector, and the inspector is the guy who, between rounds, he makes sure that there's nothing like smelling salt or anything, or go to the fighter's nose. I also had to check the gloves and make sure nothing was in the gloves, and get urine specimens afterwards. So it was a backroom type thing. So I did that for a couple of years, and the executive director at that time, Chuck Minker, he had me become the chief inspector. He passed away very sadly in 1992, and I became the executive director.
Mm-hmm. That was until 2006 when the UFC came calling. We'll ask you about that transition from boxing to mixed martial arts in a moment. But you said you were never involved in gaming, but there is a common thread that runs through the Nevada Gaming Commission and the Nevada Athletic Commission, and it is about integrity and being a world leader on top of it, Marc. It's all about integrity when it comes to gaming. Same holds true for the Nevada Athletic Commission.
Right, integrity is that's what you've got, and it's you want to, when you're running the sports, you want to do it right, and you want people to be confident. And obviously, in the big boxing matches, people were betting on it, so it was even very, very important to do everything right. And some people didn't like the decision. Some people would say it's the worst decision, but it was never about corruption. You can say an official is inept, but you can never call him corrupt. There's a big difference.
A boxing official or a boxing judge has never been on the take. There's no history of a judge ever being on the take. I know Tim Donaghy in the NBA, he was, he was fingered, but a boxing judge you're claiming has never been corrupt?
Well, I only speak for Nevada, not to my knowledge. That's for sure, to the best of my knowledge. No, that is correct. There's always going to be in subjective judging, whatever the sport, whether it's swimming and diving or gymnastics or and certainly in boxing or mixed martial arts, there's going to be some decisions that people don't like. But that's where the judgment comes in. It's subjective. That's why you have judges on different sides of the ring, and not all decisions will be unanimous.
What was your biggest challenge as executive director of the Nevada Athletic Commission? You were there from 92 to 06. What was the biggest challenge you had? Any threats to the integrity?
No, the biggest challenge was always about health and safety, and unfortunately, we did have people pass away in boxing during my tenure, and that's the worst part. That will always be the biggest challenge. And knock on wood, it's been pretty good recently. They haven't had any problems, but you always worry about that going into any fight. And we did have some unfortunate happenstance, even in the title fight. So it's always there, and that's the biggest challenge. The rest of it you can take care of, but health and safety is the most important.
The history of boxing in Nevada. Mark, talk a little bit about that. I just started a book, The Main Event, written by Richard Davies, Boxing in Nevada from the mining camps to the Las Vegas Strip. Is there one event where boxing took off in Las Vegas? When did it become the boxing capital of the world?
Well, certainly you mentioned from the mining camps. I mean, there were some big fights, and Jack Dempsey fought here, and Jack Johnson. So it went all the way back in Tonopah, and Virginia City, and Carson City, and in Reno. But no, the first big fight here probably that made it. I would say it would be 1981 with maybe with Hearns Leonard outside at Caesars. That might have been the first big one. But Ali fought here, and I saw him fight in his seventh fight at the convention center against a guy named Duke Sabadong. He was Cassius Clay in those days. Archie Moore fought here. Sugar Ray Robinson fought here. So it's been a great state for boxing. Go ahead.
And it's a great marriage between boxing and the casinos. Nothing quite like a championship fight in this city.
Especially back in outside at Caesars, there was nothing to this day that has rivaled that. MGM has certainly had some wonderful, wonderful fights, and but there was something special about being outside, and I think those are very much glory days. But to go to see Floyd fight right now, or reliving the Tyson days with Holyfield and all the different fights, I'm very blessed to be involved in some of the biggest fights in the world. You
mentioned the fights at Caesars Palace Outdoors. 1993, Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield, their second fight was the Fan Man fight. Where were you when that took place?
Ringside. When you're at a big sporting event, you hear a sound in the crowd. It's usually a fight. You know something's going on. When I watched the tape of the whole thing, then you could see the Fan Man floating around and circling around. That night, I didn't see anything until he came right into the ring, where his parachute caught on the lights. And if that same scenario happened in 2003 instead of 1993, people would have thought it was a terrorist attack. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how crazy it was. The one who deserves credit that night, who kept everything calm, was Michael Buffer, because he kept the crowd calm, because you're talking, it could have been a near riot. And so I always like to give him credit. The mistake I made that night, and you look back on things, but I should have sent both fighters back to the dressing room. We didn't know how long the delay would be. It was 21 minutes. And we've been better off probably just putting them in the dressing room, because it was cold that night. But the irony that hardly anybody knows is that seventh round, as I said, had a 21-minute interruption, and the judges had to score that round. One judge gave that round to Bowe, one had it even, and one gave it to Holyfield. If the judge who would have scored that round for Bowe, instead of having it even, then Bowe would have had a draw and kept the title. So that round changed really the history of boxing.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Marc Ratner, formerly Executive Director of the Nevada Athletic Commission. Now he's with UFC, the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs. We'll talk all about the UFC with Marc in a moment. One more big fight, the controversial fight too, the bite fight at the MGM Grand, Holyfield and Tyson. Where were you that night?
Once again, sitting ringside. right with my fingers on the canvas. And this was the second fight. We knew it was going to be contentious. Mills Lane was the referee. First round, it was pretty good. The second round looked like there might have been a butt by Holyfield. Tyson was incensed. And the third round, that's when the bite happened. And Mills called me onto the apron and said he was going to disqualify him. I'm going to disqualify him. He bit him. And all I asked him was, are you sure? Because I didn't know what happened. I thought maybe that Mike had kneed Evander or something because he was jumping around. So I always ask this, and this is from football officiating, if you throw a guy out, the referee will always say, are you sure that's what you want to do? Just to make you think exactly. And that's all I said, are you sure you want to do this? And then he asked the doctor, Dr. Homansky, can Evander go on? And the doctor said yes. And then obviously he bit him again. And if Mike would have knocked Evander out after the first bite and we didn't disqualify him, you probably wouldn't be talking to me today because we let the fight go on. And there's always been criticism, why did we let him go to the second bite? But I think we handled it right that night.
Marc Ratner, our featured guest, talking about some of the great fights in Las Vegas history. Who's the greatest fighter you've ever seen in the ring?
Well, in the ring, and I mean the films, I still think Ray Robinson and certainly the early Ali, but Floyd is very special. Money Mayweather, as they call him, does things that he very seldom gets hit solid. People say, but they may not like him, but he never is out of shape. He's always in training, and he's been magical, and so I really respect him as a fighter, and I think he's probably the best I've seen in at least the last 25 years. 46-0, 26 knockouts for Floyd Mayweather. His next opponent, Marcos Maidana, in a rematch. To the UFC, your association with the UFC came in May of 2006. Go back, though, to the early 90s when you were big into boxing and the executive director of the Nevada Athletic Commission. What were your initial thoughts on UFC as a sport in the early 90s? Well, in the early 90s, they advertised, when they first started, this is way before the Fertitta family bought it with Dana, they said no holds barred. Anything goes, no rules. And I said this to Senator Bryan at that time and Senator McCain, well, you can't have a sport if it has no rules. We'll never regulate it in the state of Nevada. Then in the year late 2000, early 2001, there was a big meeting in, I think it was either Trenton or Newark, New Jersey. I'm a little bit, I can't remember, but I was on the phone. It's about a 4-hour phone, and we formulated what they now call the Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts. Once we had those rules, then the state of Nevada could approve and sanction the sport, and in 2001 they approved it, and the first fight we had here was in September of 2001 with Tito Ortiz. So that was the first fight.
Mm-hmm. The UFC has taken off since, really appealing to males 18 to 34. I've been to a couple of UFC events. It's a spectacular show. It's unbelievable in terms of the presentation. I'm more of a boxing guy than mixed martial arts guy. I like the sweet science better than the savagery of the UFC or the mixed martial arts. Senator John McCain of Arizona, he was a vocal critic, Mark, back in the late 1990s. He called the mixed martial arts, he called it human cockfighting. He started a campaign, in fact, sending letters to the governors of all 50 states, letters to ban that no-holds-barred fighting, and a lot of states did it, unfortunately.
Well, at that time, like I said, there was a lack of rules, and so he did. He wrote every governor, and they took it off television. And the first thing that when Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta bought the Ultimate Fighting, the slogan, our mantra was, "We run to regulation, not away from it," and that's how we got these rules. And when I first came over to the UFC in 2006, there was about 20 or 22 states that had approved the sport, and now we're everywhere but New York in North America. That's all the provinces of Canada, and every state is legal in in America, but the state of New York, and that's a political problem, not about the sport, but it's just one of those things. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and we will be in New York someday.
Mm-hmm. And a political problem, can you point a finger?
I can tell you that the Culinary Union here in Las Vegas, with its sister union, the Hotel Workers Union in New York, have been able to stymie us from getting a vote in the New York Assembly. We passed through every committee. We passed through the Senate 42-14. We had close to 60 sponsors, excuse me, in the Assembly, and we've never had a vote. Somehow it gets stuck in committee or with the Speaker. So it's politics, and we have the votes if we can ever get a vote.
Marc Ratner, our featured guest, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for UFC, and he's grown the sport not only nationally but also internationally. I'll ask you about how many countries you're in a moment, but your boss, Dana White, UFC, what makes him so special? What are his strengths, Mark? And what if Dana White, hypothetical situation, what if he had taken off in boxing and been the promoter, the marketer that he is with the UFC in the sport of boxing? Would that have helped the sport of boxing?
Well, first of all, on your first question, his passion. He's not a golfer. He lives and breathes mixed martial arts in the UFC, and he's constantly promoting. I think the last time I checked, he had 1.5 million Twitter followers. So when he tweets something out, it goes around the world. I think he could have helped boxing, absolutely. But the real problem is in boxing, you have so many sanctioning bodies and the promoters don't get along that it still would have been tough. But he's remarkable. What you see is what you get every day at work. When I see him, he's the same, sometimes profane, but he's just always trying to make the sport better and looking at the fans, for the fans. When we go out of town, he will stand and sign autographs until everybody gets it or take pictures. He must have been snubbed one time getting an autograph because he will not let the fighters or himself out sign. And that's a wonderful thing. And I think we're the only sport where the fans can get close to the fighters and to the athletes at all times.
I asked you about the turning point boxing in Southern Nevada. What was the one event or fight that really made Las Vegas the boxing capital of the world? Same question for UFC, Mark. What was the turning point in making UFC a successful enterprise?
I think the real turning point was the first Ultimate Fighter television show. And the sport really hadn't taken off. We sort of call it our Trojan horse. It was a reality show where people got to know the fighters, and these are fighters that didn't know it all. And it was on Spike Television. And then at the end of this TV show, Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin had a fight that really turned it around. It was at Cox Pavilion, and people were watching it, and it was just a wonderful fight, exciting fight. And I think that was a major, major turning point. And now the Ultimate Fighter is in its 20th edition. So it's still going, and now we have women in it. And we just did an all-girls show that'll be shown, I think, more toward the end of the year. So the sport's still growing, and certainly internationally, too.
I asked you for the great boxers. How about the great mixed martial artists?
Well, when I look back, certainly, and then we go back to the Chuck Liddells, and we go back to Randy Couture's, but George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. Now we have this Chris Weidman, who's a tremendous fighter, and Johnny Hendricks. It evolves. It's a different sport than it was then. It's very remarkable, and the energy when you go to a fight is so much different than a boxing match for the most part. But there's plenty of room for both sports, and I refuse to say one's better than the other. You have to like one and not like the other. You can like them both.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Marc Ratner talking about both boxing and mixed martial arts. The UFC has done a marvelous job. You mentioned Dana White on Twitter, social media, the marketing genius that he is. The agreement with Fox was big. UFC on Fox, 7-year deal. It started in 2011. I see a lot more mixed martial arts on television these days than I do boxing.
Yeah, the Fox deal is, excuse me, very, very, very important to us. It's increased our workload and fight load because we're doing more shows for them. We have 4 fights on a year on what we call Big Fox, and that's what would be Channel 5 here. That's on network television. Then we have a new network called Fox Sports 1 or FS1 that will probably do 16 or 18 fights this year. So it really has been big for the sport, and certainly there's other promoters out there that are also on television now. So I think that the sport's growing. I really do. I think it may not quite be mainstream, but it's getting there.
UFC calls itself not only a sporting event, but also entertainment and theater.